doing the thing.
Oh, you stopped the music.
Hi.
I was just about to dive into the swim.
Oh, don't you plug
Yeah.
your nose? Yeah, the swim.
Yeah. One of my favorite helmet shows. There was some. Yeah. It was one of,
Yeah.
it was one of their up-tempo tunes, and there was, one of those, new era, modern day sort of hippie mamas,
Oh, okay.
flowing black hair, Hawaiian shirt, the
I do not know
sweatshirt,
this
like
archetype.
hoodie wrapped around her waist, and all that. She full-blown acid Watusi for the entire song without let
Like up front?
Yeah,
Ooh.
right up front. And some guy comes up and he tries to dance with her, and he could have just been a rock on the floor. She was so in her own world that he was just like doing this, trying to make eye contact, and it was like he finally just went, turned around and walked away.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I saw a couple crazy shows this week.
Mm.
Yeah, guys. Wednesday night I saw Carcass, Cannibal Corpse, and Meshuggah at the Forum. Yeah. And then Friday night I saw Imperial Triumphant and Mayhem at the Belasco. It was like extreme metal week for me.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
Remember when the Forum used to be like this big deal to go to, and now it's just like kind of an overblown punk rock venue or something?
I've seen so many different types of acts there. Like last April, I saw Bruce Springsteen there. And then this week it was Meshuggah.
I saw Billy Idol there, and the Cult was opening for him. It was their first American tour.
Really?
That's when the singer wigged out.
Ian Astbury.
Ian Astbury wigged out at the last song of the set and broke all the gear
Oh,
on stage.
that's helpful.
And it was all rented gear. So they had to pay SIR. They had to pay SIR for all the shit they broke before SIR would give them stuff to play in San Francisco the next night.
Oh, no kidding.
And the rest of of course, everybody had to eat it, and the rest of the band was all pissed.
Oh, yeah. Because that was Ian's deal, the freak out. It wasn't like a group effort.
No, it was his thing. But it didn't look hokey or staged. It looked like he really
He'd had enough of something.
He had enough something.
Yeah. By the way, here's a little.
Happy whatever the hell day it is.
We know last night I went to the Dodger game and saw him get smoked 16-0.
Ooh.
It was so bad. Miggy Rojas was pitching the final 2 innings. If you don't know, he's a shortstop.
See, I'm so
He
out
was
of touch.
throwing 45-mile-an-hour pitches.
Oh my god!
and he was imitating the rest of the pitching staff. It was fucking hilarious. I have video. It's guys, if you care at all about baseball and you don't know already, that was hysterical. I think it was 11-0, and Robert puts in Miggy and hung another 5 runs on him.
Jeez.
And he was like, okay, now I'm gonna. He was going through like the stances of every pitcher on the staff. In the dugout, they're like dying over it, but it was kind of making a mockery of the game. Bless you. But
And Otani's in the dugout going, "You pays your money, you takes your chances."
what was funny is they pulled Otani, and Miggy actually was the DH in the final inning, so he wasn't even hitting at the end. Otani.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, you're pitching and you're hitting at the top of the order. It was ugly, but it was so ugly it was hysterical.
I'm out of touch. I was starting to get into the groove of baseball.
Oh.
Two years ago.
Oh, okay.
I was starting to get into it. We were starting to get into it. We went, saw a couple of games, and when we were in Tokyo, we went and saw a game at the Tokyo Dome, which was fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought we were going to sort of make a regular routine of it, you know.
Yeah.
But no, no, we have to like,
You have a company to run.
yeah, we have to duck and cover and juggle and rethink logistics plans every fucking 5 days.
Why is that?
Why is that?
Yeah, why do you have to rethink your plans every 5 days?
Gee, I can't imagine why. Because apparently there isn't enough fucking orange juice on the planet where everybody can just relax and do what they're supposed to be doing.
Oh man, so you're solving these. So you're not only dealing with the typical stuff that you deal with, but now it's like, I mean, how many different places do you source things from outside of our borders? It's like,
Oh, there's probably, well, I mean, God. We buy stuff from Czech Republic, from Korea, from China, from we get these little specialized high frequency switch mode power supply transformers from Indonesia that you know, they probably cost $4 or $5, maybe
okay,
maybe 2 or 3.
yeah,
They're just a little tiny thing that operates at 100 kilohertz, you know, a little tiny transformer. And to have that made here by our local supplier, $45,
whoa,
right?
whoa, I don't like that.
So even so, if it costs us a buck, and they put 100% tariff on it, it costs us $2.
Yeah, yeah,
We're still gonna buy it from that source because $2 is better than
it's
46. And if you,
It's math.
whatever product that you buy that has that in it, to have the price go up $100 overnight, and we didn't change anything, we didn't change the spec, the tubes of
There's
this.
no added value.
Yeah, and people would notice that.
Yeah.
They understood when we raised the price because of the tubes, because everybody raised the price of the tubes because the tubes went hellaciously expensive. And the same with steel. High grade magnet steel that's used in transformers and copper and all that kind of stuff, and aluminum, which we use for the front panels, we use for brackets, we use for, mostly the front panels of the amps. The power station has an extruded front panel that's aluminum.
Mhm.
And so we use a lot of aluminum for a variety of things. That's like going like crazy. Plus, the sheet metal factory that was making all of our chassis for the past 10, 15 years, the owner retired. He'd been doing it for 35 years. As long as we've been in business, we started out working with them.
No kidding.
And so we'd been doing business with them on and off for their entire existence and ours. And I called up because we had moved our factory, and the place where we moved the factory to was just 4 or 5 blocks away from that place.
Oh, yeah.
And we were thinking, oh, this is gonna be great. You know, whenever they have a question, I can just like walk down the street.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, I'll come down and I'll look at what your question is and I'll answer it, and then we'll go out to the taco truck or something like, I mean, it was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And then, so I called up to talk to the owner about something, and he wasn't there. And so I called the next day and he wasn't there. And then I called the next day, I'd been leaving messages, and then another guy answered, oh, he retired last week. I went, huh? And then this other guy calls me up and he says, I'm the new sales manager. And he was one of these really smarmy guys.
No, we don't like those guys.
And he was just like, yeah, we can do everything, we can do anything, and yeah, we really want to blah, 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 and take you on a tour of the factory. Well, I don't really need a tour of the factory.
And it slices, and it dices.
Yeah, I've been here 100 times, but okay, let's just go. I'll go. Let's look and see if the staff is still the same, and they're all the same.
This isn't the one where you had to buy the lights for the...
No. Anyway, they had got purchased by this sheet metal fabrication company in Michigan or something that owned a dozen other sheet metal fabrication places, and they were buying up these smaller companies and trying to make them all sort of operate the same way, the same corporate structure, the same
Sure.
management structure, the
Yeah.
same
We
way
are
of doing
unified
things. Yeah.
under one.
And when those kind of things start happening, that's when you start talking with people that haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing.
Right.
They're just reading off a script. They're telling you whatever it is you want to hear, and then when you finally get what you've been waiting for, it's entirely backwards, upside down, wrong. And well, we want to take care of you, and then it takes them 3 months
No, you don't.
of getting it worse and worse and worse until you have to literally start all over again. And then,
So you like that, is what you're saying?
yeah, I loved it. I loved it. And then we gave them a job. I'll have a quote for you on Monday. Monday came and went, Tuesday, Friday, 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, we're still trying to gather some information. I'm like, come on, it's a quote. You've made similar stuff before. I need to get this thing in. It's hot. I want the turnaround time to start the clock right now because I want them in 6 weeks. Yeah, we'll get right on it. Well, 6 weeks later,
No.
nothing.
No.
And like 6 weeks later to the day, I get an email saying that they're not accepting any more items for quote, and we're going to be finishing up the last of your jobs, and then we're closing up this business.
What a bunch of
yeah.
wipes.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of.
Wow. Sounds like fun.
You know what? It's actually interesting
I'll
and
start a
challenging,
Yeah.
but
I can see that.
it's like when you go down a line of people and you get whipped with the belt.
Just getting flogged.
You go down 2 rows of guys that have belts, and then you
I don't know.
run
this,
down the
but
center of them, and
one
you
of our
get
friends will know.
yeah. You know what I'm talking about. It's
Hi everyone, by the way.
Oh, are we live?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, Brendan, I see this comment here. Malcontents White Russian edition. Does that mean that you are on the White Russian train?
Or are you lobbying for such an episode?
Yeah.
Hey, we're
So what,
really into
that's-
good customer service. We're happy to accommodate you. Just give us 6 weeks.
That's vodka, Kahlua, and heavy cream.
Heavy cream, yeah. And ice.
Wow. Hi, Lou. Yeah, that's a White Russian. That would be fun.
Come on, what is that
Sounds
thing
like
when you're being punished and you're in a group like in the Navy or the Army, and they make the bad guy run down the row of 2 rows of your fellow recruits, one on each side, and as you run down, each one of them gets a whack at you. Come on.
Lou says hazing? You
Hey,
talking about hazing?
no, not hazing.
I know, like being thrown in the brig. That's
No,
a thing
no,
that
no,
happens
no,
on
no,
naval ships.
Come on, help me out. Help me out with this. Somebody knows this.
Like it's a common punishment thing?
Yeah.
You run the gauntlet?
Thank you.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had no idea I was going to get that right.
Yeah.
A spanking tunnel?
Running the gauntlet.
Oh, running the gauntlet. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And they use belts or wet towels.
That makes all the sense in the world now,
Yeah.
because how I remember that phrase, this is an awful story, but Henry Rollins, when he lived in Venice, and his, in the house where his roommate was murdered, he was like, yeah, when we lived in Venice, it was not a good place.
Yeah.
So it's like when we would want to go, from, outside of Venice to our place, like we would get on our bikes and just go, and we call it running the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to get robbed? Are we going to get hit? Or is something going to happen to us before we get home? Like, go and do not fucking stop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
A blanket party.
Blanket party is a little different. Blanket party is you take a blanket and you put rocks in it and you whack the,
That's brutal.
and everybody gets one. You know, like you'd use a blanket or
The hell is
or a
that? Who does
pillowcase or
that?
something, and you put rocks in it, and you all get around and you beat the guy that's the rat or whatever.
Okay. It's Charlie Brown. I got a rock. So anyway, Brendan, I think he answered. Just a guesstimate of the episode, whether or not it's going to be the White Russian episode. Well, no, we're having a homemade ginger beer, right? Ginger ale?
Homemade ginger ale, yeah.
And then some Balvenie, what is this, the double wood or something?
I don't know, it's your shit.
Balvenie? It's your shit. Oh, you mean scotch? You're
Yeah,
you're supposed to know all this.
It's brown. That's what I know about it.
Oh, it's tasty. It's very nice.
It's brown and it's tasty and it goes good with ginger ale and. So we don't have a life because the life we've chosen is just like
bringing GPIs.
it's
and power
it's
stations
all it's an all consuming.
So no more baseball. Not going.
I'm not saying that it does that things don't involve baseball bats, just not that particular game at the moment.
Lou, what are my favorite guitar strings? I've been using Elixir.
I thought I was going. If you better not name one of those shishi guitar string brands like Elixir, and there you go.
Well,
there you go.
Well, the funny thing is like I can't play strings that aren't shishi because I kill them like that. I need something with that coating, or they're just dead within 15 minutes. So I started using those in 2001.
So you get strings that already are dead to start with.
No, they have the coating on there. So they retain their brightness and snap. So that's what I use.
Huh.
And my typical gauge is like 10 to 49. Is that what it is? Does that sound right? 10 to 49?
Yeah. 10,
Yeah,
10
I think so.
17, 26, 10 to 46 is the normal 10 set.
DS, that's cool. And you know what? I figured you would ask this question. I'm going to throw it up here. And no, we did not get to that. And I'm taking responsibility for this because I said I was going to bug Steve on it, and I haven't had the chance to think about jack shit. Do you remember this? We were talking about finding the non-functional Pitbull preamp. So that still needs to come. Do you think you know where it's at? If it exists, you know where it would basically be, right?
I have a hunch.
Yeah.
I have a hunch.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the way my week has been going. I just needed to do one thing on the GPDI. I wanted to verify whether one of the pots was a 10K audio or 10K linear.
You said pot.
And I had too many balls in the air, and I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. And so all I needed to do was grab a sample board or look at the schematic and check that. And it literally took me from Monday till Friday to finally, when I either about to open up my design program or get out of my chair at my desk,
Get out of bed
and go into the production department and grab the sample board and look at it. It took me all week to do that because every time I started to do it, I got sidetracked by something else, and the whole week has been,
You got thrown back down the gauntlet.
Totally. It's just been crazy.
Wow. Well, we'll have to go to a baseball game at some point.
Yeah, I really need to get my yayas out. But we've been, trying to organize how we're going to deal with all the nuttiness and, take care of our partners, our dealers, around the world, and figure out how we're going to make sure that they get their stuff on time without getting hosed by some ridiculous tariff thing, you know, our friends in Canada, we have 3 really nice dealers in Canada that are great people. And they're like, oh man, you know, and then it's, there is a tariff, there isn't a tariff, there is a tariff, it's 25%, it's 100%, it's 5%, it's 0, no, it's 10. And this is all in the space of 3 days. And so, and the shipping companies are all bouncing off the walls too.
Sure. 'Cause it's
Our
a disruptor
suppliers are
of
bouncing off the
everybody.
walls because they don't even know what to tell you. So on a daily basis, we have to figure out what we're gonna buy today and talk to several different suppliers and see what their policies are, see what some places might have this particular part in stock that they received before the tariff was enacted, so we grab those as much as we can, as much as we can realistically use in a year.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't know what the next price is gonna be, and so it's like, you know, I mean, it's kind of like pinball in a way or something. You just, take it, you know, grab that, and we're conferencing all the time with our suppliers, with our dealers, with our vendors, and with the engineering staff. You know, all right, how long and how long will it take, and how difficult would it be for us to make this small change in the product that nobody will notice, won't affect the performance at all, but it will allow us to build it a slightly different way to get around this part that in the past it wasn't really a problem. We'll just use this particular part because it's really easy to get, and it's available from a couple of different suppliers, so we'll use that. And then well, we had 2 suppliers for one particular part. They make it the same way. They're different manufacturers, but they make the identical part. So if one of them doesn't have it or has a particularly long lead time for some reason, or gets too busy and the other one is more available, that we can switch back and forth, right?
Oh, that's really
But
cool.
then when
That's
both
cool.
of them are in an area where there's all of a sudden a magical tariff appears, and we're like, okay, that's not convenient anymore, and there's a local supplier that makes something that's a little bit more expensive, and it doesn't exactly fit the footprint in that of the product that it's going in. Engineering wise, it'll cost us a little bit more to redesign that one little aspect of the product so that we can use that other part that will cost a little more, but now it's less expensive than the less expensive part because that has a tariff and this one doesn't.
Yeah.
And we're having that conversation 3 or 4 times a week. Is it worth doing this? Should we just write it out? Do we know what's gonna happen next? So we're on high alert all the time, you know, and when the tooth supplies were really scarce, we were contacting JJ going, look, we need to know how long it'll take us to get 1,000 6550s and what the price is gonna be and all of this. And they would go, well, our lead time is 55 weeks and we don't know what the price is going to be when we get started on your order.
Okay.
So
55 weeks?
55 weeks.
What would a typical time in non-trying tube times be? What would
They
a
would
typical lead
usually
time?
have it in stock.
Oh, dang.
Or like 4 or 6 weeks, something like
So
that.
that used to be like whoa, that's a big back order, 4 to 6 weeks. Whoa.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
they'd go up
Because
to
you pay
50.
for it in advance, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
So when they say it's 55 weeks and you pay for it 100% in advance, and what you pay is not what you're going to pay. What you're paying is a deposit, and if it ends up our materials costs go up between the time that you place the order and the time we ship it, we're going to charge you the difference. But we don't know what it's going to be or when that's going to be.
Yeah, right.
And it went from that 2 years ago to, oh, the price has now gone down about 20% and they have them in stock. So
So you're like, great, sweet, we're rolling. Not so fast. Tariff time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah,
then
that's
the
great.
tariff, and then they're in Czech Republic. JJ is. So, they're in Europe, and that was going to be a 25% tariff, and now it's supposedly going to be 10 for now, for 90 days, or for never. Oh my God.
Yeah. So
The
DS
language.
will definitely. I'll remember to bug you about this preamp because I want to see it too, and it hasn't left my mind. I just didn't get around to bugging you this time, but I remembered it, and it's still in my notes. So, oh, we're talking strings still. What strings do you play, Steve? You Diodario guy, or are you a I don't care guy?
Say that again.
What kind of strings do you use?
Oh, D'Addario's.
I figured. Oh, hey, what's up, Simon?
It's been D'Addario's for a long, long time. You know what? I actually like Ernie Balls too,
Oh, really?
and they kind of have a. I switched from Ernie Balls to D'Addario's because I thought that Ernie Balls sort of had a little bit of a rinky-dink quality to their sound.
Mm.
And I've been using D'Addario for so long, and then I did a string of gigs, and I went to buy like a dozen sets with extra tens and
Yeah.
you know the strings that I break all the time,
Spares,
extra
yeah.
G, extra E, and they didn't have D'Addario single strings. They only had Ernie Ball single strings. And I didn't want to buy D'Addario's, but Ernie Ball extra tens and extra. So I bought all Ernie Balls. And when I started using them, I went, oh, I like these. And what do I like about them? They just sounded different than what I'd been using.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
know,
can see that.
and I went, oh yeah, that familiar rinky-dink sort of sound. But now I like it because it's different than what I'm used to.
I
So-
really like the sound of Diodario's for the 15 minutes that they work for me. I do. I would definitely use those, I think, but I can't. And then Scott was asking if I smoked or, whoever kills strings, like do you smoke or drink? Because when he stopped smoking and drinking, he stopped killing strings like that. No, I don't smoke. I mean, I drink when I'm playing a Malcontent on TV, I drink, but not really. I don't drink very often, unless I'm hanging with friends. That's about it. But I mean, I was like a teetotaler for a really long time, and I still killed strings back then. So I've never even had a puff off a cigarette in my entire life. Not even a puff.
Hmm.
My dad smoked like a chimney. It's like, ugh, it's not for me.
Yeah, my dad was
No attraction to it.
pretty serious smoker.
Yeah?
Yeah, Camel non-filters.
Did you ever smoke?
When I was
Besides when you're playing the guitar.
high school. I smoked a little bit when I was in high school, but I never made a regular habit of it. I didn't have a regular habit. I didn't have a brand. I would get a pack of cigarettes every once in a while. If I was playing with a band where everybody smoked, I would just sort of get an obligatory pack, and I would smoke maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then I would go, this is ridiculous, and I'd throw them away.
I'm a poser.
I'm a poser,
I
yeah.
don't need these things.
I go, why am I doing this? I really do not enjoy this. Anything that had to do with smoke in my lungs, I was not into it.
Yeah.
So that didn't last
I'm always
very
like,
long
would
for me.
would I run into a burning house and take a big old inhale? Like, yeah, that's kind of what you're doing when you're
Yeah.
taking a drag, right?
Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, then my dad had a cyst in his lung
Oh.
when he was about 48, and the cyst popped and his left lung collapsed.
Oh
And-
my God.
And it was kind of a minor thing, actually.
Doesn't sound minor.
Well, it just had a hole in his lung from a cyst that had popped. Just a little.
You know what I don't have? There's a hole in my lung.
Yeah, well,
That
I mean, it
sounds like
healed
something
pretty
you don't
quickly, but what what came from that is what's interesting, because he was like, thought he was having a heart attack or something, right? He goes to the doctor and they give him he gets a chest X-ray, and oh, you had a cyst, yeah, that just take it easy, it'll heal in about a week or two, and your lung will start to fill up again, and you'll be fine. And that's what happened. But he goes, oh, that's a really great X-ray. You can really see my lungs clearly. And he says, yeah, it's because you smoke like a fiend.
Oh.
And he goes, really? He goes, yeah. What you're seeing is all the tar in your lungs from smoking. That's why you can see your lungs so well in the X-ray.
Ooh.
And that freaked him out. So he quit smoking.
Oh, he did. Good for him.
While he was recuperating from the cyst, he quit smoking. And then I think 4 weeks later, he went in and got another chest X-ray, and his lungs were clear. And he was so blown away by that.
Wow.
And so he stopped smoking.
Oh, Joe, I hope you quit, man. Yeah, we don't want to killing you, man. Fight the good fight.
But all the other things, the hardening of the arteries that it causes and all the other crazy shit.
I'm going to throw this up on screen because it's a happy thing.
Oh.
Howdy, gents. Just dropped by to say I confirmed this week that the reactive... Oh, it's cut. You have the mouse covering the comments over on your screen. Can you remove that, please?
What are you asking, Tom?
Here, I'll do it. I know what it is. Watch this. See the comments? Oh, yeah. There we go. It's graying out the comments over here.
Oh! I had no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
it was just confirmed this week that the reactive load on my power station is much better sounding than my other devices.
Thank you. Hey, I know who you are. You did this guy did this amazing review, a comparison of a PS100 against his amps, playing it active and bypassed.
Yeah.
But he did a killer job.
Oh,
he
right
really
on,
did a
man.
killer job.
Oh, cool.
He did a killer job of balancing the levels so that you could hear the difference.
Yeah.
And this guy did it all with Fenders.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you would have had a showman and a bandmaster and a twin, or a couple of. Did you have a dual 15 showman cab or something? Yeah, all this Fender stuff.
That you don't see that very often.
You don't see that.
In this
and
land.
I turned the level up on this video and listened carefully. I wanted to hear. I can tell when the Power Station 100 is on, and I listened to that. I could not tell.
Nice.
He did the best job of demonstrating that, and I was so impressed that he did it with the PS100, and I said,
yeah, he's saying, check this out.
I said, I did a dual showman through a 250 cab of five
different volume levels.
Yeah,
There was no difference.
Yeah, it was
right
amazing.
on, man.
And then I think, didn't we send you a PS2 to do the same thing with? I think we asked you if you would do a follow-up on that with the PS2, but I don't know if that ever happened or if we ever sent you the unit or what. I don't remember now. But man, that is still one of the best Power Station demo videos I have seen. The guy's a great player.
Yeah.
And, emphasizing the clean stuff, not the gacked Marshall overdrive all the time or the heavy stuff. It's like the clean, making an open, chimey Fender sound like an open, chimey Fender. It was really a nice, different angle than everybody else does.
Very cool.
Beautiful job.
Very cool.
Thank you.
No, I'd love to check that out because Fenders are where it all starts for me.
Yeah, that was a cut up.
Oh, Amanda. This looks like it sucks. They had can you see that, Steve? They had an ice storm, lost power for a couple days, and her basement flooded. And and her only amp was sitting in 8 inches of water. That's pretty ass. I'm sorry to hear that.
Wow.
Ay, ay, ay. I'm sure there was other stuff down there too.
basement flooded. You know, water invading your space is really an upsetting thing. We had our first factory.
Oh,
Our first factory had a water heater at the bottom fell out, and we had all of these speakers stacked up on the floor
no.
of the place, and we had all these boxes of parts, and everything was all stacked up on the floor, and
Amanda was saying they didn't have the proper insurance set up for that stuff. Reality bites.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and insurance bites too.
Yeah, insurance always bites no matter what.
Yeah.
All right, you saved your guitars. Sorry to hear.
That's fun.
Here's a question. David asks, can you quickly explain how power scaling, like the London power scaling, works in your opinion on it? Greetings from, is that New Zealand, David? That's cool, man.
I hope it's New Zealand.
That's super cool.
Either that or it's greetings from all my Nazi friends out there. Just kidding. Just kidding. We love the New Zealand.
I love the New Zealand. Yeah, let's be clear on that.
Okay, here's...
Yeah, the London power, I had an amplifier with that in it once. It was broken.
Okay. I apologize in advance.
You about to wind up?
No, I'm not going to really wind up because I think I've
I'll wind you up.
mostly got this out of my system. But I think my issue with power scaling is the name of it.
What the hell? What's going on with power scaling?
Well, okay. First of all, you have to define scaling. What does scale mean? So if you're saying you're scaling power,
Sorry.
you have 100% power and now you have 50% power. That's half of this 50%. It's scaled down 50%. But what is scaled down 50%? It's not the power. The power output when you scale just 1 or 2 voltages down just scales down the voltage, not the power.
Okay.
And the other thing that the knob, the scaling knob on the amplifier, when you turn it down, the other thing that it doesn't do is, I need a visual aid here, but I don't have one.
What would it look like?
It would be like a transformer.
Oh.
But I would need 2 besides in the shop, I could do this. But take 100 watt, just use your imagination, take a 100 watt output transformer.
Mm-hmm.
Weighs about 8 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And you run it with 4 power tubes and it puts out 100 watts. Now you take a 50 watt amp, you take a 50 watt power transformer that has 2 tubes in it.
2 tubes.
So that transformer is probably 20-30% smaller than the 100 watt output transformer and uses 2 tubes, so 50% of the tubes.
Right.
And the knob on the scaling circuit didn't switch from this to this. It just turned down 2 voltage parameters on the big one, which means the 4 tubes are still there and the big power output transformer is there and the power transformer is still there. So you didn't really scale the power. You just...
Oh, that's why you don't like the name.
Yeah.
Because it's implying something that
it's implying something that physically cannot happen.
I see.
And
That's interesting.
but the reason I have a bitch about that is because you're implying something to people that really don't know what any of that stuff means and have an expectation.
Sure.
And what you get is tubes that are now no longer working anywhere near the point where they're really starting to sound good.
Yeah.
At the volume, it's really starting to sound good.
Yeah.
It's actually getting smaller and thinner. And I keep seeing these applied to, high watt clone type amps. And it's the last amp that anything like that would actually work, because they tend to get thinner and less expressive and less harmonic
And
as,
it already has a tendency for twinkiness from the beginning.
yeah,
Because you got to crank those
and
machines up.
most of the high watt, the current high watt clones do not have that. People say that, oh, I put a vintage one side by side with a brand new one and they can't tell the difference. Well, maybe, but that wasn't never my experience. And I just feel like that's another entire subject. But the power scaling thing, it just turns voltages down. And I don't care if somebody says, well, it actually turns 3 voltages down, not 2. I don't care. It doesn't behave like a scaled down amplifier. It doesn't make a 100-watt amp behave from beginning to end like a 30-watt amp, no matter what you do with it.
Yeah.
So it's just another thing like the post-phase inverter master volume, and every variation of that. The Larmar post the blah, 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 post-phase inverter master volume. But first of all, it's way too many goddamn words. And
I like this.
And it doesn't.
This is my favorite part of the show.
And it doesn't get you anywhere. So, I mean, let's just, and I'm sorry, I don't want to be a pitch man, but the power station was born out of abject frustration for.
By the way, David's saying that he has a power station. He uses that now anyway.
It was born out of frustration for all the bad takes that people have been pitched about how things are supposed to work, but don't actually.
Which were all important iterations on and ideas to get us to this point, right?
Yeah. But
we've talked about that.
They're more like what was that movie? About the Tom Hanks movie about the.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Why do I know? It was early Tom Hanks movie.
No. This was this was more recent. It was
I don't know.
The conspiracy about the Bible and the whole.
I don't know. Da Vinci Code.
Yeah. The Da Vinci Code, and there was
thinking of something.
There was a character in there that was like.
Oh, I never even saw that.
Was whipping himself with the chain, and he was like one of the conspiracy theorist guys that. You just keep whipping yourself and going, why can't I get this thing to just play nice with me? I want this sound. I just want it literally scaled down. That's what we want. I think that's my genetic beef.
Oh my God.
With the power scaling concept is we want to scale that big thing down into a little bit more manageable picture without losing all the Jews, right?
Yeah, of course.
And that doesn't do it. And the power station does. And that it does it because it was born out of the frustration that nothing else did that. And when I first heard it do it, I was just as shocked as anybody else. I was like, that has no right or reason to work as well as it's working. I mean, I it was just an experiment. I thought I would just try it and see. I had no earthly idea that it was gonna. Erica heard it. She came in my office when I was goofing around with it, going, "This actually sounds pretty decent." She comes in, "What are you doing?" And I explain it to her, and she's like going, she's can play guitar. She's been around the company long enough. She knows what the good things sound like. But when I explained it to her and she got it, she actually had a tear coming out of her eye. She's like, "This is gonna be a thing." And I go, "It could very well be. We'll see. Maybe we'll sell 100." So, yeah, I mean, it's just been doing this since the early 70s and tried every single mod, every single master, every single pulling the tubes, starving the bias, variac, every single thing, all the different attenuators were out there, you know?
Yeah.
And the funny thing I see is well, we've been seeing it for the last few years. There's a new crop of players that are exploring the same territory now, and they don't have access to history.
Yes.
So now these already tried and exhausted and discarded ideas have gotten resurrected. They've been given a new lease on life for a while for a new crop of guitar players to experiment with, try to understand, and then discard as impractical or useless or whatever.
Yeah.
So they get a little additional time in the sun.
Yeah. The new generation boost.
Yeah. And but the other thing that I see is they're blips. They're not like, you know, actually this was a really great concept and it had been sort of hidden in the you know, under the rafters for so many years, and somebody rediscovered it. Why didn't we nobody's saying that. It's just like, oh cool. No.
No.
Yeah.
Eh,
So
bye.
sorry, I don't mean to
This is the best part.
I don't mean to wave a flag or anything like that. It's just progress. It's the development. It's the thing.
Look at this.
Getting it to move forward. Getting the whole dynamic to move forward.
So back to David's question.
David's question.
Right. He said, can you quickly explain how power scaling works? Okay, hold that. The operative word is quickly. This is my favorite. Look what Mark said.
Quickly explain. Are you familiar with
The
this
show?
Oh yeah. Okay, power scaling is a variable voltage regulator that will operate in one or two different voltage parameters in the power supply. One of them is the plate supply, and the other one is the screen supply, and that you can adjust the plate, and the screen, or both, for a predefined lower level of voltage that is applied to the tubes. You can apply it to the power tubes or the preamp tubes or both, and then set it high or low to whatever your sweet spot is. And the only thing I don't like about it is it doesn't do anything. The sonic result of using it has nothing to do with what was advertised. Thank you.
Cheers to you on that one.
I think I am going to throw some vodka in my ginger beer pretty soon.
All right. You want to do that before or after this next question? Is it vodka time right now? Or is
No.
it question time?
No.
Okay.
No.
Here's another question then.
Talking out of my ass like usual.
Okay. Whoa. It looked like our video was lagging for a second.
Can
Can you read that? I can read it. The question is the PS2 in self-attenuation mode while simultaneously powering a passive cab. So guitar to preamp to power station line in to PS2 speaker out 1, PS2 amp in, PS2 speaker out 2 to cab. Are there any risks? What Bone wants to know.
One thing that is really going on right now is I've got the attention span of a gnat. I think we've been bounced around like basketballs so much in the last couple of weeks that I don't have two pebbles in my head to bang together. In self-attenuation mode, I'm going to have to read this myself.
Yeah, it's a lot.
In self-attenuation mode, while simultaneously powering a passive cab, guitar preamp, line in, speaker out, amp in, PS2 speaker out, cab, any risks. So you're saying simultaneously powering a passive cab, guitar, preamp, power station line in, speaker out, amp in, power station to, speaker out to, cab, any risks. That's the reason I probably lost concentration while you were reading that. I'm a little bit confused about what you mean by the passive cab, but I think the operative question here is about using a preamp on the line in and an amp.
Well, there's
Oh,
actually.
it's a preamp in self-attenuation mode, and you're running a cab at the same time. But then you mentioned a second speaker cab. So you would be running a preamp into the line in, into the power station in self-attenuation mode, which means you're taking the speaker out and plugging it back into the amp in. Guitar, preamp, line in, speaker out 1, to PS speaker. I see, speaker out
and
2 to the
Bone
cab.
is saying yes. That's correct.
That is correct.
Yeah.
There's no risk. The only thing you have to do is set the impedances properly. So
that was the next.
so the speaker,
question.
the out, you've got the two speaker outs. One of them is going back to the amp in, and the other one's going to your cab. So depending on what your cab is, so let's say your cab is 8 ohms. So you're going to set the speaker out to 16. And then you're going to take the top speaker out and plug that into the amp in, set to 8. No. Depends on what your cab is. But if your cab is 16...
The cab is 8 ohms.
The cab is 8 ohms. All right. So the cab is 8 ohms. And you're going to have to set the power station amp, the speaker out to 4 and the amp in to 8. So you have two 8 ohm loads. One is the amp in and the other one is the cab. That's two 8 ohm loads. So you would set the speaker out to 4 and the amp in to 8 to match the speaker cab that you've got connected, which is 8.
Okay.
And so what you will get with that is you will get the power amp of the power station cranking into its own load, and then you'll be able to take the XLR out and plug that into your DAW, and you will also get that same sound coming out of the speaker cab, and you would control the volume of both of them with the volume on the power station. If you want more distortion, of course, you would have to turn the volume up louder on the power station to get its own power stage
working
to start getting close to saturation. The limitation on that would be how loud you can tolerate the volume coming out of your speaker cab, because as you turn it down to manage the volume, you'll also get it down below the distortion threshold of the power amp, which would make the sound coming out of the DI out into your DAW cleaner. Yeah, otherwise, knock yourself out. When we first came out with that, somebody asked, I'd like to be able to figure out how to use the power station I'm using it right now with a cab and a preamp, but I'd like to get more mojo out of it, and I don't really need the speaker cabinet hooked up. How could I do that? And I thought, I think you can do this. So I went and did it. And I went, this is so cool. Yeah. I got to share it with the world. Yeah. And at first, we put it out there and did a video on it, and people are like going, no way, that's against all the rules, blah, blah, blah. And now it's kind of a thing. Everybody does it. Oh, and by the way, you can't do that with reampers that have solid state power amp. That doesn't work.
You're getting nothing out of it. Yeah, I made a more polished version of your original video a couple years or a few years after that, and I really felt at the time, I mean, it's a little bit of setup, but geez, I don't want to not have that in my toolbox.
Yeah.
Because you just right here, you can just brown things out, and it's just right here on a knob, right there, sitting at your desk, working. Like, it's a really, really cool thing to play with. And I think I was doing it at the time, just running the GPDI. GPDI, power station, self-attenuation, and just, man, there's a lot of flavor in that. Okay. I need to put on my glasses.
Yeah, we were talking about, last week we were talking about what we were going to talk about on the show, and one of the things we were going to talk about was this ecosystem where how we operate different than other companies in our field operate is such an interesting dynamic, because we are able to find so many oddball ways to, you know, kind of off the wall ways of using gear that most people wouldn't think of to do or wouldn't try, because it kind of flies in the face of the norms about, you know, what you can do, what you can't plug into this and that, and you know, this self-attenuation thing, that's eventually gave rise to the Cyclops, because we needed a way to, okay, well, now that I can do that, I want to do this, and it kept escalating. The people that would come up with ideas for how they wanted to use the power station, and it was the same dynamic that we would go through when we were first doing amplifiers, that, you know, it's a 2-channel amp, it's a 3-channel amp, it's a 3-channel amp with boost, it needs a solo volume, and blah, blah. What about an effects loop? What about a series parallel effects loop? What about a stereo effects loop? What about stereo power? And it was all, every time we would come up with a new product in the form of an amplifier, there would be a slew of suggestions about, well, if you can do this, why don't you do this and this and this and this? And it would sort of lead towards the sort of overblown expectations about what the amplifier should be and what you as a player are trying to accomplish. And is this really something practical that will make your workflow better, or make your tone better, or make you a better player? Or is it just a wish list of things that you think, oh, that would be cool, you know, until you actually get it, and then you go, wait a minute, there's no earthly use for this feature whatsoever, you know. But it was a cool idea on paper, you know. We get a lot of that. But the newer slew of products that we're coming up with, they kind of lend themselves to that. And the power station begat the Cyclops, and then while we were figuring out how we're going to manage the other requests about the power stations, can you make it so that it switches 2 amps, 2 preamps, 2 amps and 2 preamps, and you know, the number of speaker outputs, and can you do 2? Could you make it switch, and blah, 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 blah. That begat the ZMAX, and then all of a sudden you could glom the ZMAX and the Cyclops and the power station together, and this unholy new triad of things that just allow amazing flexibility. And you haven't even really changed the tone or switched channels or anything. You just had these 5 different ways to configure that basic setup and do so many things that you forgot all about, that you needed it to be channel switching or that you needed a boost. You just got a totally different paradigm instantaneously. And I think we were talking about how having a rather than just putting products out there, because that's what a company does.
Well, it starts with your stated, you're always using that phrase, you know, everything has to have a reason to exist.
Yeah, everything flows from that.
And the reason isn't we need a new product for the 4th quarter.
But a lot of products come out because they need a new product for the 4th quarter, or we need something new to show at NAMM, or you know, we have to keep feeding the beast.
It's driven by looking around like, who's going to take our lunch? Can't let anyone take our lunch. We got to have the next thing out. We got to stay relevant. You know, kind of like people putting out crap records before they're ready. You know, like
But to me, it speaks to companies that have marketing departments and committees, and they sit around and talk about what's out there. And hey, that would be something that we should go try to like come up with something. That's a cool idea. Maybe we could do something like that, but different. You know, put our spin on it and blah blah blah. Well, first of all, you have to even know what it is you're making, and who it's for, and why you did it in the first place, and then think about, okay, now that we've got this thing all fleshed out and operating, let's think about what we can do with it, and let's look at the kind of feedback we're getting from the customers and see what their perception is, and then see if our thinking about, hey, you know what we could do with this aligns with the feedback we're getting from people that go, that looks like, would it be possible, like the gentleman with the self-attenuation mode question, would it be possible to take this and connect it like this and achieve this? As soon as the GPDI came out, my good friend Ignacio, who's he's the, not sure what he's at Jensen. I'm not sure what his actual official position is at Jensen, but he has a lot to do with driving the product development. He's a really good guitar player, fantastic human being right off the bat, sweetheart of a guy. I love talking to him. Every time we talk, it's just like this, bang, 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 bang. And he got a GPDI and immediately emailed me back. He says, hey, that add a amp feature thing is really cool, but I just have a preamp I'd like to use with this. Can I use that? And I went, hey, you know what you could do? You could do this. And he's like, oh, no way. And he did that. And he emailed back and goes, that's just so awesome. And we made those the two features. We put the effects loop the way people had been asking, and in the process took away the effects loop that we thought had a more practical application than the one that's in there now, but people wanted to be able to put a reverb or a delay between the preamp and the power amp of the GPDI and then run it into a little cab or run it in their DAW and listen to it on headphones and play that way. Okay, I get all that, but if we were going to put the effects loop in there, then it made sense to put the add a amp feature in there too, so that you could do more with it rather than just put something in the effects loop. So that putting the effects loop in that way begat the idea of putting the add a amp feature in there. And then once we put it, I never really considered using a preamp with it. I just thought it'd be cool to show up at a gig that had some mediocre backline there, and it had something on the back line that's just a basic amp that's got an effects loop in it, and you walk in, put your GBTI on top of it, plug it into the loop with your little delay and a pedal board, and you wipe the floor with the rig, you know, and everybody's like going, how'd you get that piece of shit to sound so good? Yeah. And that was kind of like the goal there. Mm-hmm. And then to have, like, one of the first guys to get it, immediately bang back and go, oh, you know what, can we do this? And like, yeah, here, do this. Oh man, you know, and that kind of stuff happens because it's a company that knows what they're making and why they're making it and who they're making it for, as opposed to a company that is just making stuff and they need to make more stuff, and the people that they think they're making stuff for is people in the market that are buying stuff, and they're not making a real distinction between who those people are and what their expectations are and what they're going to be offering them that's anything other than just something new to market against.
That's a really interesting question for anyone who's in the business of designing, manufacturing, selling. And it's that if you're, are you making timeless things that you sort of run the risk of, I sold you this thing once and then you'll never need one again. Go on your merry way.
Yeah.
How are we going to replenish customers? How do
Yeah.
we keep, you know what I mean? Versus, oh, this thing will have a little bit of planned obsolescence built in, and we'll just turn this around in a year and a half, and we'll make the new version that makes this one dumb. And you know what I mean? Like, how do you, is it just all about having faith? Like, well, I don't know. We want to make timeless things that work forever, and we're going to hope that new people come along each time. Like, is that what it is? Or do you don't think about it that much? You're just like, we got to make what feels like has a reason to exist. And
Yeah, it all is down to that. The whole idea that you know inside and out intimately what is being made and why it's being designed and developed to do what it does, why it's doing it, who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, and what are the things that are out there that are not doing the thing that it was originally marketed to you to do, and you bought into it for a while, and everybody bought into it for a while, and then it peaked. And why did it peak? And I'm talking specifically about modelers and things of that ilk, because they aren't real amplifiers. They aren't the other half of the instrument, which I always go back to. There's two things I always say. It has to have a reason to exist. And everything that we make is either an amplifier or a subset of an amplifier or an accessory to use with an amplifier. And the key central thing is the amplifier, and that it's a tube amplifier. And why is it a tube amplifier? Because it works together with electric guitar in a way that no other kind of amplifier works with a guitar. And that, in effect, makes the guitar useless without the amplifier, without the other half of it, the instrument, the same way a violin is useless without a bow. You can have a violin, and then you can go get a little thing. Instead of having a bow, you could go make a little box that's got a spinning wheel on it, and you put resin on it, and you can go like this, and maybe it's got a couple of buttons, and one of them does vibrato, and the other one does sort of a staccato thing on the strings, and you can make it do these things, but you're not playing the instrument anymore. You're goofing around with a little gimmick. Because when you drag a bow across the violin, have you ever noticed this? You ever watch like a Antiques Roadshow or something like that, and somebody brings in a violin? Yeah, I got this when I was a little girl, and it belonged to my great-grandfather, and there's a label in there. It's kind of hard to read, but it looks Italian, I don't know, and I've got the bow that came with it, and is this worth anything? And the appraiser goes, well, it's for a student violin at the age that you got it, it's an excellent starting point, and it's a nice little violin. It isn't really worth very much money. Now, let's talk about the bow. So this is a such and such a bow. It was made in France in 1779 and blah, 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 and it's a really unusual bow, and this is really nice. And so what do you think this stuff is worth? Oh, I don't know, probably $100 or $200. Well, let me tell you, your violin is worth $50, and the bow is worth $12,500 to $15,500. And then the kid passes out. And it's happened over and over and over on that show, where the bow is this.
Interesting.
Unless it's paired with an instrument of commensurate value,
Yeah.
it's always this really lopsided
Yeah.
thing.
An asymmetry of sorts.
Yeah, yeah. And it tells you something about the importance of the bow to the instrument, and how you play it, how it feels, how it's balanced, the wood that it's made out of, and the tension there's a little knob in the end that sets
Yeah.
the tension and all that. All those things are part of how you play and interact with the instrument. It will not behave that way without a violin and a bow of commensurate quality in the hands of a person that knows what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
So if you think about the instrument, which is the guitar and the amplifier, and the people that are going to play it and understand the larger implications of putting those two pieces together and how to make them, greater than the sum of its parts, the way somebody like you would, or David Torn, or Pete Thorne's great at that, and of course, the legendary players. Jeff Beck was a master at that, and then there's just other players that are just too numerous.
Tiny Tim.
Yeah,
on the
Tiny
uke.
Tim. Okay, but
Fucking virtuoso.
but nobody ever did Tiny Tim better than Tiny Tim, right?
He was
And-
number one in a series of one.
So, every new thing that we make is an extension of the philosophy that we're continually working towards the refinement and the protection, the refinement and perfection of the playing experience and the inspiration of and getting the joy out of it, having the fun and the excitement of playing the thing and having it come back at you and having all of the nuance that you put into it reflect back on you. And there's just I never played a modeler or a flat, lifeless, clean platform amp with a bunch of pedals in it that would do that thing. Those things do a lot of things, and for this on this day in this session or at this gig, I need this and this and this and this, and that gets me by. And there's a lot of compromises that players make because of size of venue and the weight and how much they're getting paid and whether or not they want to put that much effort into going to a gig. But none of that matters to me. What matters to me is when you plug the guitar into it and you play an E chord, and do you go, I'm ready to explore this more. And whatever I thought I had to do 15 minutes from now went right out the window. That's all I care about. And so,
Fuck, I'm late to work.
and so our whole company is wrapped around that. So it's not just me. It's all the people there are invited to weigh in and listen and try things, and they've been doing it long enough that they sort of understand what the agenda is for the day is to listen to something. We're going to listen today. And I'm not going to tell you what we're going to listen to or for. We're just going to listen. And then we're going to talk about what we heard. And invariably,
That's cool.
it'll be, everybody likes to play along. They know it's not a joke. They know I'm not trying to trick them. I'm just looking for any kind of feedback, any kind of reaction, or no reaction. And everybody's comments are fair game. And that's just the way we run it, because you know what you're doing, and you know why you're doing it, and you know who you're doing it for. So if somebody says, I hear a little thing in there sort of annoys me, I'll write that down. Let's figure out what that is. And there's a certain thing. There's a certain thing that does when you hit that note. I really like that. Okay, we're gonna make a note of that. We're gonna focus in on what that is and why that is. And is that something that we need to draw people's attention to? But we know what we're talking about, and we know who we're talking to. And I don't think that big companies with levels of management and marketing and sales and engineering, and they get together as a committee and they all throw out shit at each other and try to figure out what the hell they're doing. I don't think that they do what we do, because each one of those departments are segmented.
Yeah, so you wind up with more of a Frankenstein concept.
There's no overlap in there where
Yeah.
somebody understands, oh, I see, okay, I can see how this is related to this. Even though not everybody at the company is that technically inclined, they're technically inclined enough to know that there's a relationship between this and another product. And when we get together and we put things together and show everybody what it is we're making and why we're making it and how it works, then they get their heads wrapped around it, and then they know that they're building this thing that does all these other things.
Yeah.
And so there's some enthusiasm behind that. But the real important part of it is that we're knowledgeable about the basic parameters of what we're working on and what we know is possible and what we think might be additionally possible, and then we go about figuring out how to try to accomplish that. And it's not like anybody operating in isolation over in this one place. They go, hey, I got this little widget. Okay, yeah, give it to marketing and see if they can figure out a way to sell it. And then they come up with a marketing program, and then, okay, give it to sales and have them go out and like pitch this marketing sheet to people. And, you know, sometimes that works, and sometimes it's extremely offensive, and sometimes it just lays flat. And every once in a while, a company that doesn't have that sort of really intimate attachment to everything that makes guitar playing fascinating,
A fingertip feel.
something, whatever it is, it's just going to be this month's or this quarter or this half year or this year's, you know, model.
So, have you ever released a product just to kind of get something out the door?
I'm trying to think of one, and I can't. What we have done is conceive of a product idea that we wanted to get out the door, but it took too long in development and missed this window, and then it got sort of put aside, and then a new window opened up, and then we came back to it.
Oh, interesting.
And like the GP3 preamp, that window opened and closed about 3 times before we finally got it into production.
Oh.
And then once we did, it went like crazy for 2 years, and then the whole rack concept just died.
Uh-huh.
That was like the end of the.
Oh, yeah,
it finally came out about just as the whole consciousness of rack systems was winding down, and then recently it came back, and so the
Unless you're Michael, and then
the development stuff,
that never ended.
it just
The rack era never ended.
it just got put aside, and now it's back on the radar, it's back on our attention, and we know that we can go back and pull things out that were actually still in a state of development and just stopped.
Oh, yeah.
And then I found out that
Dust it off.
we dust it off and look at it and go, hey, you know what? The reason that this it's really interesting. The reason that this particular thing ran aground is because we didn't think that the power supply configuration for it was practical, and we didn't want to use the old school dumb power supply, and the one that we had put in there was pretty good, but we wanted it to be better but we didn't have the right thing for it, and now we do.
Yeah.
And so like going back and looking at, hey, you know what? All we need to do with this is just do the one thing that we kind of hit a wall on.
Yeah.
So these things, they can sit there and molt for years and then come back and, hey, you know what? All we need to do with this now is just a little facelift and this bitchin' new power supply, which interacts with the part of the power supply that was in it before. It's like all falling into place. So no, I don't think we've ever made anything that we were just doing. We never made anything just because somebody else made something. We're going to go eat their lunch. I never did, because it isn't.
So when are you going to make the 412 cab rotating?
That's the window for that. It's a fucking great
There
idea.
was never a window.
The window never opened for that.
Or you make the fucking window and you just cram it through. Okay.
We're in an era. We're in an era right now where people are crazy enough to do that.
That's true.
You know what's really
Can you
funny?
tell them what it is real fast? I'm sorry, I went into it. I didn't explain it. I know some people know because we've talked about it on here before. But
well, I'll tell you one thing that we did do that was completely off the wall nuts, that we just did knowing that it was nuts, but we're just going to do it anyway. It's not going to sell. We're just going to bring it to the show, and people are going to go, what the fuck?
So this is the NAMM show.
This was the NAMM show,
Yeah.
we had a 612 cab. And it was the coolest 612 cab ever, and not too many 612 cabs ever got made. But this one was cool.
Straight or slant?
Both.
Oh, whoa. Wait, stackable?
No, it's like this tall. 412s in the bottom with a slanted baffle like the straight fat bottom cab.
Yeah.
With an isolation at the top, and then the rest of the cab then angled like the top of a slant cab.
Uh-huh.
So the bottom was like a fat bottom. 4 front mounted 12s on a tipped baffle.
Yeah.
And a sealed back.
Yeah.
16 ohms. And the top angled with 2 greenbacks, rear mounted and open back.
No.
And then a jack plate that you could plug in all 6 or the top and the bottom separately.
Oh, wow. Okay,
was,
does this thing still exist? Is that in storage?
We don't have one in storage, but somebody sent us a picture one of the other day. Somebody has one. I think we made 10 of them all together.
Wow.
And somebody sent us a picture of one and said that they had one and had a broken jack, and could we get him a jack for it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll get you a jack for it, but you got to give me pictures of the entire thing because we don't have any good pictures of this thing.
Oh, man.
And we sold a couple in Germany, and they had the handles on the back, and you tipped it back and rolled it like an SVT cab.
SVT, yeah.
I was
How cool.
We'd never made enough of them to make an actual packing box for. So we made it. We put it in a 412 cab, and then put another 412 box on top of it and slit the sides.
Yeah.
So it would slide down the top, and then taped it.
Yeah.
So that it looked like the box was made for it.
Right.
It was so insane.
And about what year was that?
That was 2000.
Oh, okay.
That was 1998 to about 2002. I took one to a gig.
Of course you
At the last minute, somebody called me up and they said, "Hey, our guitar player's sick. Can you come and fill in? We got this show, blah blah blah." And I went.
Like, you sure about
and we
that?
had that one. I went. I'm gonna bring this. I'm gonna bring this. And
did you really know these guys?
yeah,
Okay.
they're old friends of mine, and
So they knew what they were signing up for when
and
they brought you in.
and I rolled that thing in, and they looked at me like,
You asshole.
You're a crazy motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's why I called you. You know, but the band that opened for us had the guy had some little cool little boutique
A combo?
210 combo. It was nice sounding, and the singer in this band was just like kind of a rhythm player, and he didn't care what amp he played through. And so he arranged with the opening band, hey, can I just play through your amp? And guy was like, oh yeah, I'd be thrilled to have you play my amp. And then so we played the set, and the singer goes, hey, can you tell me what to do with this? There's knobs and things, and I don't know how to turn them, and blah, blah, blah. And I saw one that just said volume, and I said, well, maybe I would start here. And I just turned it all the way up, and he played an E chord, and he goes, yeah, that did it. And then we did the set. And then afterwards, we were tearing down, and the guy who was the guitar player in the opening band, whose amp it was, came up to me and apologized. He said, I knew when I saw you rolling that shit in that was going to be an awesome sound. And I'm sorry that you had to put up with that funky little amp of mine in front. And I said, what are you talking about? That amp sounded great. It worked perfect for him. We were glad to have it. Thanks a lot for loaning it to us. That was really nice of you. We appreciate that. And he's like, that's so cool. Because it's such a little, I said, it's not a piece of shit. It's a cool amp. It works for you. Enjoy it. And he's like, wow, thank you. He was like, what did he want me to dump on him or something like that? I just couldn't conceive of that. I was just thinking, this poor guy. He's like,
well, I think there can be a little bit of like, if you're on a joint bill and you're rolling in with a little combo, and then you see the other guys come in who are on the same bill, and they like are bringing like the big guns. There's a little bit of like, you know, are they, you know, is it
are these guys like really serious musicians,
or
is it the reality? There's just one crazy motherfucker in here that's going to bring like a tank, you know, to a
and it can be like overcompensating, you know, like I'm going to come in here and throw my shit around,
a BB gun shootout, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what I did. I would just like bring guns just because I love the reaction. I just love the people to go, we're gonna die. Yeah. That was the best part of it.
So can you quickly describe the rotating 412 cab?
Oh, okay. Well, a friend of mine who worked in the film industry had built this. He was a machinist, and he had to come up with all these contraptions for TV productions and movie productions, you know.
Yeah.
They always need some crazy piece of equipment to do something, right?
That doesn't exist.
And it's a one-off, and they get a budget to produce it.
The director's like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to build it.
And you're gonna have to make it work, and you get a machinist, and you know where the steel supplier is, and you know somebody that's got a lathe, and
you live for that shit.
You live for that shit.
Yeah.
And this is what this guy had made, this rotating table that had to have something sitting on it that was powered. Might have been a jukebox. I don't know why he originally made it, but it had to be AC powered, and it had to spin, and the speed of the spin had to be controllable by a foot switch, like low, medium, and fast. And so he had to make this turntable that had a insulated rotor below it that had two concentric copper.
That's the tracks
on it that had sliding contacts for the 120 volts to power the thing.
Yeah.
So that it could spin around and get power from the wall to run this piece of equipment at different speeds. And it had to be really robust because the piece of equipment that was sitting on it was heavy. And after he did that production, he called me and he says, you know, I had to do this project for this TV thing, and he was a guitar player. And he said, after I got it done, I realized that, you know what, I could make two of them. We could put speaker cabinets on them, and you could, the tracks they will handle enough current that you could plug it into the 100-watt output of an amp. And plug the cab into it and play into it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. I went,
oh, yeah, I'm doing it now.
Yeah, right.
Bring it down.
And I said, okay, I'll take two of them. And so they they were set up. We never actually finished building it because he ended up being unemployed, and then he was out of work for a while, and I lost contact with him, and he's probably still lives around the area, and probably if I make enough noise about it, he'll pop back up. But we had envisioned that we were going to bring, at the time there were all these companies making Univibe clones, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, Univibe clone, Univibe, eh?
Got one for
Leslie?
you. Yeah.
You want to talk about Leslie? So he also had this, so he had built these two, and it was all MIDI controlled with a volume pedal, the expression pedal thing, so that he could make one spin at a different speed than the other one, like a Leslie. And we're like going, okay, we're gonna have a fucking heyday to do it. So we were gonna bring two 412 cabs to NAMM on these contraptions on each side of the booth and have a ultra lead head plugged into it.
Here's your guitar, stand there.
Stand there, yeah. And the problem is that we could not get safety clearance for it because it would be spinning around, and if somebody walked by our booth when that thing started spinning, they would get fucking creamed, right? And so then we would have had to put this big screen around the outside of it so nobody walked into it, and I'm like, okay, this is already just like going off the rails because of this. How are we going?
How far did this get?
It got to the point where it was operational at the guy's shop.
Okay, all right.
And it stopped there.
Oh.
When it got to the point where
What a shame.
to do this at NAMM, and if you think about it, Leslie, the bottom speaker just kind of goes like this, but the top one goes slow, and then it goes like, 75, 80 RPM, right? So if you can imagine a 412 going like this, and if it broke, or if somebody walked by it and it hit, they would definitely be dead.
One of the coolest things that Mesa ever made was the rotating speaker cab thing.
Yeah, well, and that was a spin-off of the Fender Vibratone cab from the 70s, which Fender had bought Leslie. So they owned Leslie, and they took the Leslie the concept and put it in a smaller box, and that was a thing for a while because George Harrison and everybody's using Leslie's, and so they were trying to make a portable live performing thing, and so we were trying.
See,
so what if we make
this
metal mesh around the whole thing, and no, that might.
Who's the guy? The Taj Mahal.
Jesse Ed Davis.
He played.
I sat at his feet in 1968
with the rig, the whole.
With the Paisley Telly, the Paisley Telecaster, into a little Fender amp, into a Leslie, and I was 16. Yeah, 15, 16, at this venue in Seattle called Eagles Auditorium. It was about a 2,000 seat hall. It was like a union hall that was turned into a Seattle's Fillmore,
Oh, cool.
kind of a place where all the bands played, and I was a huge Taj
intimate hall.
As soon as I heard Leavin' Trunk on the first Taj Mahal album, I was just hooked, and hearing that guitar sound, and I was still a drummer at that time, but I was just enthralled by his guitar
that's interesting.
tone. And so when we went, it wasn't really super crowded, and I got up on stage and sat on the little steps on the side of the stage, one of those stages that had the hardwood floor, like an auditorium, with the wooden steps on the side. And I walked up on the steps on the side and sat there right in front of his Leslie and just watched him.
Took a lesson.
Just watched him groove.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. I ended up meeting him later at another venue where I was playing in a band, and he was sitting in front of me like this for the entire set with this big shit-eating grin in his face.
That's incredible.
And
that's the best
I didn't know it was him. There was this guy just smiling at me the entire set, and I'm like, who is this psychopath? And after the show, this was just in Studio City, this little tiny dump.
Remember what it was?
Yeah, it was called the Blah Blah Cafe at the time.
Mm.
And it was it was like a real hip venue for singer-songwriters, artists kind of stuff. And so it was.
Were you in there with the 612?
No, I had a high watt half stack for that one.
Oh, okay.
And I was playing in a band with this singer-songwriter that had written some songs for a couple of movie soundtracks that got some notoriety, and so they had made an album. So we were like doing this gig, and there were a lot of intricate little parts that I got to play, and it was a fun gig. And here's this guy, and I was getting a little intimidated. Anyway, after the show, loaded the stuff in the car, and I'm walking out on the sidewalk in the front of the place. There's a bunch of people, and there's this guy that was sitting in front of me on the sidewalk, and somebody from behind me went, "Hey, Jesse!" And he turned around, and I just went, I got goosebumps, and he, "Hey, dude, I'm over here."
Oh, yeah, you
And I
connected
looked
the
at him,
dots.
he goes, "Oh, hey, you're the guy that was, yeah, you were pretty good, man." And I said, "Do not tell me that you're Jesse Ed Davis." He goes, "I'm Jesse Ed Davis." And I go, "Holy shit, this is so crazy." He goes, "What?" And I said, "Oh man, I've just been an admirer of your playing for a really long time." And he goes, "Really?" And he says, "Well, you were playing some really great stuff." And I said, "Yeah, you know where that came from? I was sitting at your feet in 1968 at Eagles Auditorium in Seattle in front of your Leslie with your Paisley Telecaster." And he went, I said, "That's where that shit I was playing tonight came from." And he just like went, "Wow." And so we kind of blew each other's minds. It was pretty special. It was a pretty interesting night. I never forgot that. That was just amazing. But
Wow.
I mean, it all goes back to, why are we doing this, and what are we doing with the stuff that we want to do these things with, and how do we make them do that? And real gear is the only thing that does that. And fake gear, and that's all I can say about modelers and solid state power amps. And oh yeah, they're getting better, and they're getting smaller, and they're getting more reliable, and blah this and blah that, but they still are not that thing. Okay, I mean, yeah, they're functional, they're lightweight, they're inexpensive, they're portable, and they have a reason to exist.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the reasons that they exist are more in the utilitarian sense of
100%. 100%.
of the word.
It was a digitalization of a mature analog technology. And I think the most telling thing about this whole deal is that we're still not talking about tones, signature sounds that were created from, say, I'm not going to name any brands' names, but like, this is the, blankety blankety blank sound. Like the digital boxes, it's all about, well, what's its plexi sound like? What's
Right.
its AC30 sound like?
Right.
What's its deliverance
Right.
model sound like? It's a version of AI. It's like, it's only going to put out, it's going to regurgitate. It's not going to give you, brand new materials, right?
Right. You
So
said
it was something that needed to happen.
You mentioned something about AI the other day that just struck me as a home run, which is it's not contributing anything new to the discourse. It's just regurgitating the same discourse, gathered together and glommed together from different
and
resources.
it's only as good as its inputs.
Yeah.
Because it's trained on things. It's not going to give you the fresh perspective.
It's not creating something out of nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And so I never get tired of talking, as you can tell. I never get tired of talking about that, because you said something really key, which was that the tube technology is a mature technology. And the minute you start believing that, you start closing off your options. You start closing the potential for what the stuff can do, because you don't think of it in terms of, in general, the general output of tube amplifiers, the general run of companies that make tube amplifiers for whatever reason they make them,
Mm-hmm.
because of passion, because they think they can sell a few, because it's a fun hobby. Uh, it would, maybe I could augment my income by knocking out a clone of a this or a that, or,
Or you started doing it with a very narrow interest, right? Like,
Right.
I really love this particular sound out of this amp, and then you get really good at recreating them and putting your spin on it, and that's what you wanted to do.
yeah.
And you spoke your piece with that,
But I think that the general run of the stuff that comes out is reiterations of the same thing over and over and over again, whether it's, it's the guy that's making all the clones in China, or the guy that's making all the clones in Indonesia or Taiwan or wherever else the hell it comes from. He makes really cool stuff, and he's really a nice guy, and the prices are right. Okay, those are 3 good reasons to buy that product from that person.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to realizing the further potential of the mature technology, that takes a little bit more imagination, I guess.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that I'm this brilliant egghead wizard that does this. But it takes that thing to move the supposed mature technology to another level where, hey, wait a minute, that's actually, there's still room to carve out a new way to apply this stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you get unhooked from the idea that you're locked into this paradigm, then you start going, well, I guess it takes a person like me that is willing to hook up things that I know are going to catch on fire. I know are going to make smoke. I know are going to blow up. I know are going to melt things, and just to see what happens.
Yeah.
We know it's going to work for at least 20 minutes. And if we can get it to work for 20 minutes before it starts spitting out parts, we're going to learn something.
Yeah. And that belies a deep curiosity.
No, I think it belies a fascination with putting cherry bombs in model cars when you're 9 years old, and waiting anxiously for the outcome to take place.
In the entire time that I've known you, your curiosity hasn't waned for this stuff.
No, it doesn't. That's interesting that you should say that. I wonder what that's about. It's curiosity, it's enthusiasm, it's an escape from reality. It's a world.
We're all looking for that.
Yeah, it's a world to occupy when the
Yeah.
real world is going berserk and
Yeah.
flipping upside down. And
Yeah, hopefully you choose, a somewhat healthy version or avenue.
well, if you call like flaming output transformers healthy, I suppose. Yeah, I
Want
suppose
to take
that-
another question?
Sure.
All right.
Sounds good. At the night.
So this is a tube question.
Arrested research and development. That is good. I'm keeping that. Arrested research and development.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Okay, we're putting that over the R&D office door. Sorry, I'll send you a royalty or something.
Can I ask a tube question? Currently have EL34 for high gain, but I'm trying to get a more aggressive tone. Would changing tubes to say KT77s or something help with fast and tight attack?
Depends on the amp. So
Yeah.
let's identify the amp and then we'll expand on that.
Okay, cool.
First of all, KT77 is a British name for a EL34 type tube. It's a slightly different construction than a beam pentode, which an EL34 is. A KT77 is part of the KT series of tubes, KT meaning kinkless triode. And there's no sexual innuendo involved in that.
That's what you think.
It refers to the behavior of the tube under test circumstances where you develop an operating curve from the tube's operating parameters. And at the very end of at the very beginning of the curve, when the tube just starts to energize, there's a little kink before it goes along and starts operating in its linear region. The kinkless triode was a tube that was designed to eliminate that little turn-on transient, that little turn-on bump that was identified as kink. And so I had this conversation, sorry, this is gonna be a long one. I had this conversation with somebody the other day about the differences between a 7E25 and a 12AX7. Back in the day, when tubes were manufactured around the world under the auspices of the regulatory agencies that determined what tubes were made, and that whatever the specifications that were developed for a particular tube type, those were adhered to, and that adherence was overseen by an agency that you basically would design a tube to operate. We need a new vacuum tube to solve an engineering problem that we're having. We need a little bit more power. We need the kink to be gone. We need blah, 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 a little bit more linear operating curve. We need this, we need that. It needs to be more less microphonic or more rigid, or all the, the military wants this particular characteristic, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the design parameters that were demanded for the new tube that was going to be developed, the engineering department of the tube manufacturer would develop that, submit it to this agency, and the agency would assign it a new nomenclature, a new number, EL34, EL,
KT77.
right. And that would be applied to that tube, and any tube that carried that nomenclature had to operate within a reasonable range of those parameters. And a lot of times the different tube companies would come up with slightly different variations to get around the patents of the other manufacturers.
Oh, so the KT, is that a version of this?
Yeah, it's a variation. Actually, it's the beam pentode was, I might have this backwards. I think the beam pentode was RCA's way of getting around Genelec, which was the British division of General Electric. One of them had a patent, and the other one came up with the slight variation in the operating parameters and the construction of the tube to get around the other's patent. So that's a lot of what that was about.
Interesting.
So the 7025 was a low noise 12AX7, and there were things that were done in the construction and in the material selection to make that tube produce less noise, and primarily what was called shot noise, which is the behavior of electrons in the tube. They would have a particular kind of noise that was basically created by the velocity of the electrons hitting the conductors on the inside of the tube. So design alterations were done to a 12AX7 to get it to produce less of that shot noise. And so there's a lot of different variations of the 12AX7 type. There's a 7025, there's a something 80, 81, 670, something with the last two digits. I don't have all these numbers in my head, but lots of different variations. Some were suitable for high velocity vehicles where there was going to be a lot of vibration and speed. Some were designed to resist nuclear radiation. Some were designed to be able to withstand high vibration or used in very high gain applications where low microphonics was important. So each one of them had a different nomenclature identifying that tube was specifically designed for that purpose. Tubes that were designed for use in computers, for example. So those were all things that were created when those tubes were in full-blown manufacturing and when there was a level of administrative oversight applied to them to make sure that they met these standards. That's all gone now, because those agencies either they don't exist any longer or they do not oversee the manufacture and the regulation.
Be interesting to find out when those things folded.
Well,
When
that would have
ceased to
been
be a thing.
in the 70s when
70s.
when their manufacturing when they were becoming obsolete.
Yeah.
So that gave modern day manufacturers the freedom to just put any number that they wanted on the tube.
Yeah.
And that's why you see 6550s that are actually KT88s and KT88s that say 6550 and blah, blah, blah. And their parameters are very similar, but they're slightly different. And they're different because they're made with different materials in different factories and may have different vacuum, or all these different parameters have slightly changed. But the manufacturer arbitrarily puts a number on it to imply to you that this is what its performance is going to be like, whether or not it actually is. And that just means that there isn't this oversight any longer that controls what you're really being told versus the reality of the tube. In some cases, there have been improvements in a manufacturing process that make the tube not exactly like the one that was being copied, but actually performs a little better. But it's going to be a little different, and you're going to say, oh, well, it's not like the old ones. It has a different sound. It might actually be better. It might have a better power transfer. It might handle heat better. So we go along and along and along with this, and the 70 tubes that are labeled 7025 right now, a new manufactured tube, Electro-Harmonics just came out a year or two ago with the 7025, a new tube that they hadn't made before. And it is a different tube. It is very low microphonic, and it doesn't sound fantastic, but it's a very quiet tube, and it's very low microphonic. And so you can put it in the V1 stage of a really high gain amp and it won't squeal.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it a 7025. Who knows how close it is to a real 7025, or if it even is a 7025. They had a low noise tube before called a 12AX7WB that was not a
Did
12.
they phase those out?
I think they still make them. I'm not sure, but it was not even a 12AX7. It was another Russian number that was a variant of a 12AX7 and had lower gain. And other manufacturers took that tube and rebranded it as a 5973 or a 50 something. There's another number of the slightly lower gain. About 12AX7 usually has a gain of 100, and this other variation of the 12AX7, which has a gain of 80, it has a different number. And so these numbers, the numbers that are applied to these tubes are kind of arbitrary. So when you ask, well, the behavior of my amplifier change if I put KT77s in it? Well, it depends. Are you talking about new old stock KT77s that are like really, they're like Movar or Genelec KT77s? And if that's the case, I won't be able to answer that because I hadn't listened to a real KT77 in a really, really long time. But I would say, what are we looking for? 34, more aggressive. I would say JJ has a EL34 variant that they call a KT77, and I think Electro-Harmonics does too. And they tend to be brighter and crisper, which might solve your, address your more aggressive requirement, but not necessarily because it's a KT77. It's just that that's a tube they make that sounds more aggressive than a regular EL34, and they call it a KT77, and God knows why they do that. I don't know if they actually copied one, or if they used a real KT77 as a reference. And like I said, I haven't actually compared a current production KT77 to a real KT77, and by real, I'm saying that that would have been a tube made in the 60s, or at the latest, the 70s. And as I always say about tubes that are 50, 60 years old, they're not going to sound like they did when they were brand new, because there's going to be some outgassing, and so they're going to lose some of their potency. even just sitting on the shelf, even though they've maybe never been used, they're new old stock, they're really new, they're really in a box that never been used, they're still gonna have some deterioration. So your experience is gonna be relative, and then you're gonna say, well, this is the genuine KT77 sound. Yeah, well, I'm the genuine person that I was when I was 20 too, but I don't run like I'm 20 anymore. And I can't drink like I'm 20 anymore, but I'm still me. So that's just kind of I'm just trying to deconstruct your expectation based on the nomenclature that's going to be applied to the tube. It's less about that and more about trying different EL34 types. And yeah, maybe go ahead and try the KT77s and see if that does it for you. It would really help to know exactly what amp it is. Did he? I said that earlier, and did he answer? Do we know what kind of amp we're talking about?
No. Unless it's further down here, but I'm holding.
All right, well then, let's see. Yeah, all right, what do we got?
Well, I mean, that was quite an extensive answer.
All right, well,
So we're gonna answer a couple more questions here. Coming up on the 2-hour mark. Oh, this is from Texas Blues Alley, the cat who did the power station videos with the Fenders, asking about capturing IRs. Conventional wisdom is to use a solid state power amp, but would the power station be linear enough for that purpose? Using a sweep, not white noise.
yeah, okay, so this is where I'm gonna seem to contradict it to myself, but the fact is, the problem with solid state amps and when using them as guitar amps are exactly the reason why they're superior in capturing IRs. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to model the speaker behavior, the speaker impulse behavior, and the microphone that is being used to capture it. So the you don't just get the speaker, you get the speaker and the mic, and that's why you do it with different mics in different positions, combinations of mics, and all of that. So you want the raw impulse behavior of the speaker, and you don't want the power amp to color that. A solid state power amp has a very low impedance relative to a tube power amp. So a tube power amp, you're going to run a 16 ohm speaker with a 16 ohm tap on an output transformer of a tube amp. In a solid state amp, you're going to have a very low source impedance on the solid state power amp, something in the neighborhood of less than an ohm. And that doesn't mean that it has to match the speaker. What it means is that different impedance of speakers will cause the solid state power amp to put out a different level of power depending on what the impedance is. So you'll see that there's a curve with solid state power amps. They'll go you can use this power amp in anywhere from 4 ohms to 16 ohms. At 4 ohms, in some power amps, it'll be the most power at 4 and it'll decrease as it goes to 16. Others would be like lower at the low scale and then higher around the middle, and then they drop off as it goes up. So you'll see different, depending on the topology of the solid state power amp, you'll see that power output range be optimized somewhere for whatever reason. Usually when it's optimized for sound reinforcement, PA systems, that kind of thing, you're going to see the 2 ohm spec be the best. What's important about that is that very low impedance will not color the behavior of the speaker. It will make the speaker behave more accurately because the amplifier won't be reacting to that. That's the beauty of a tube power amp. It's that it interacts with the speaker, and the power amp influences the behavior of the speaker, and the behavior of the speaker influences the power amp, and the two of them together is the synergy between those two is what makes the personality of the amp. The solid state amp interrupts that. It blocks that characteristic from occurring. And that's why they don't make very good reamp devices. Like the ones that are out there that are solid state. I don't care what the brand is. I don't care how good the solid state power amp is in there. I don't care how transparent they say they are. They're still blocking the speaker from behaving the way it would behave if it was connected to a tube amp. And so that's why when you're doing generating IRs, you're going to want to use the solid state power amp so it does not influence the behavior of the speaker. Next caveat, actually had a guy in a recording studio. Actually, no, he's not in a recording studio. It's a friend of a friend. They're partners and they're doing a lot of developing IRs. They're doing speaker packages. They're
Okay.
cab packs. They're pressuring me to start sending them amplifiers so they can model our amps. I'm not really down with that still yet because I'm not ready to do that yet. I don't know if I ever will be, but that remains to be seen. That said, they asked me that same question, and they have a really good solid state power amp, kind of a high-end audio power amp. It's not Class D, it's Class AB. Or might even be running Class A. Very expensive and really neutral, really super linear flat. And I said, yeah, I recommend that you use that to do your IRs. And they have a LX2 power amp.
Oh.
And they said, what would happen if we did use that? And I said, that's probably the last power amp that you would want to use for that. Oh, okay, thanks. And about a week later, yeah, you're wrong. It just sounds fucking great. And okay, so now we go into the territory of what is the IR? You said conventional wisdom. And I love that you included that phrase because it's exactly the circumstance that when conventional wisdom gets involved, there's, some jerk off is gonna want to go break that and do it differently. And so I can't argue with the idea that they love doing it that way because they think that it gives their IRs a little bit more personality. Sure it does, but it's not the speaker. All I'm saying is, great. It's not just the speaker and the mic anymore. It's the speaker and the mic and the amp.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're talking about that, well, that's probably going to be the next extension of capturing IRs because, how many vintage 30s can you make IRs up with the solid state power amp before? How can I make a better vintage 30?
But ours is better, Steve.
Yeah.
Ours is better.
Ours is better.
Yeah.
Why is it better? Well, because we had an extra. The recipe calls for vodka, but we use tequila. Oh, but you can't. Conventional wisdom says that a greyhound is made with vodka. You can't make a greyhound with tequila. Well, you can make a greyhound with tequila, but it's not really a margarita, but it's not really a greyhound either.
It's called a greyhound with tequila.
Yeah, well, we're going to call it a greyhound 2, or enhanced greyhound, or whatever it's going to be. I kind of see that. I'm already seeing it. Some guys that are making IRs, some companies that are making IRs, they're sweetening them.
Oh, there we go.
They're doing post-production.
Yeah.
They're doing mastering.
That's wild.
They're doing all kinds of stuff because why?
Because ours is better, Steve.
Yeah, because ours is better.
Yeah.
And you can do that.
I get it. That's cool. Yeah. Let's make things sound better.
See,
That's
my problem with IRs is once you get past 4, it's like, I got this IR, it sounds really good. I got another one, it sounds really good. Oh, this one sounds really good. It's a little different. It's got blah, blah, blah. And then the fourth one, that's pretty cool too. And then the fifth one, you fall off a cliff and now you're in a rabbit hole of 89,000 IRs.
And then I put my guitar down and I leave the room.
Yeah.
I'm no longer having fun.
Yeah.
That's just me. I know some people love that stuff.
I cannot imagine.
I
go to a restaurant. If the restaurant has got too many things on the menu, I just go, bring me a salad and a margarita, and I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
I failed to be able to make a decision because of that.
All right, speaking of being out of here, let's do one more, and then we got to roll. Um, this is a question about the SIG-X. Why the 200K bias feed resistor in the SIG-X versus the 100K normally for KT88s?
Um,
What that Cobra is.
yeah, I'm just looking at that, and well, first of all, if you look at the if you look at the data sheet for a 6550 or a KT88,
The same friend who asked that question says, by the way, I know nothing. So maybe explain from that point of view.
okay. Well, if you know nothing, then how do you know about this bias feed?
That is something. That is something. Because I sure as hell don't know that.
Yeah. Well, those are called grid leak resistors, and according to the data sheet on a 6550 or a KT88, they recommend 100K bias grid leak resistors in order to prevent the tube from going into runaway bias condition. But according to the data sheet also references all the design parameters, all the actual operating voltages, the typical operating voltages of a particular tube under these specific operating conditions, the plate voltage, the screen voltage, the bias, and all of that. And under those particular circumstances, they recommend a 100K resistor. So if you design the amplifier using all of those specifications, you will use 100K grid leak resistors.
Okay.
The Power Station 100, for example, has a split plate screen supply configuration like the 292, like the 2150, like the SVT power amp. All of those have a traditional operating topology for the 6550s based on the data sheet.
Yes.
That's why they use 100K resistors. The SIG-X uses a much lower plate voltage than that, and the screen and the plate voltage are very similar. So its operating characteristic is completely different. Now, the other thing in the SIG-X is that it's not like the Ultra Lead. The Ultra Lead is this big, high dynamic, high headroom, tight, unforgiving.
Is that high voltage?
Well, it runs at about the same voltage as the SIG-X, but it's got a different. It's got a bunch of different operating parameters, and the phase inverter is designed to not clip until the power tubes clip. So the power amp stage in the Ultra Lead is super, super clean, and don't ask me when the Ultra Lead's coming out. I'll tell you when the Ultra Lead is coming out, and then you will know.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Yeah. They don't say Haynes till I say they say Haynes. And so that phase inverter in the Ultra Lead has got a lot of headroom to push the tubes out to their saturation point, which lines up with what the output transformer is doing. The SIG-X is different. The SIG-X is intended to be a little bit more of a forgiving amp, a little bit more natural saturation, more touch sensitive and more player friendly. More forgiving.
A little sloshy.
Yeah. And part of the reason is that it's got a phase inverter that has a little less maximum headroom. So we use the 220K, the 200K grid leak resistors in there because if they were 100K, then the phase inverter would not develop enough swing to push the tubes to full output. And so the because of the voltages and because of the way the 6550s or KT88s and the SIG-X are operated, it's okay to run them with 200K bias feed resistors without worrying about them running away bias, because they won't be operating in the condition that would cause that to happen. Did somebody say Sun 2000S?
Yeah, Lou was saying, I'm wondering what my Sun 2000S sounds like.
Is it original 2000S? Because if it is, it was built with basically a modified Fender preamp and a Dynaco power amp. And the Dynaco power amp is a dual 6550 60 watt ultra linear amp. And it sounds really good clean. It does not sound that good overdriven.
Oh, it is original, 1969.
Yeah. That's the amp that the designer of that and Hafler designed the power amp stage of that.
Oh, interesting.
The guy that did Hafler, his name is Hafler. He was the founder of Dynaco. He created the Dynaco company, those Dynakits that, and I've got two of the Dynaco Mark IIIs in my my stereo system. They're the 60 watt ultra linear monoblocks. They're wonderful as stereo amplifiers. They are not wonderful as guitar amps. They were good as bass amps. People, when I was in high school, if you didn't have the money to buy a Fender bass amp, you could go buy a Dynakit and build the power amp, and then run something in front of it and make that work. But the Sun being using the Dynaco power amp section in it sounded really good, clean, up to just the threshold of distortion. Sun got an opportunity to show Hendrix a bunch of amps when he was on the West Coast, and between Hendrix's tech and the engineer at Sun ensued a big argument about the Sun guy, I think it was Sunholm, I'm not sure, but told Hendrix's tech to tell Hendrix not to turn the amps up all the way. You weren't supposed to do that, and then, of course, the rest is history. But
that was conventional wisdom.
That was the conventional wisdom. Thank you. You're really good at
callbacks.
Yeah. You're really good at callbacks.
So that would not sound so great. So Lou's saying that their amp might have been, they said they think it was used as a bass amp for Steve Miller's band, which is from your homeland, right? Steve's from Seattle. Did you see him back when he was the guitar slinger?
Not only did I see that, also at Eagles Auditorium, but there is, you can Google this, or you can search it on YouTube. Steve Miller Band live video, Steve Miller Band live at Eagles Auditorium 1968.
Oh, that's the same place you saw Taj Mahal.
Yeah, and there is not a video, but a recording. Somebody recorded that from kind of off the side of the stage. Killing. And if you're a Steve Miller Band fan, and you listen to this, you're going to go, that doesn't sound like Steve Miller Band. That sounds like Steve Miller Band trying to be Cream, and that's exactly what it sounds like. And that's exactly what they sounded like at that show, and I remember being there. They sounded like they were trying to do Cream, and he's killing. Wow, he's using distortion, because he didn't really use that much distortion. He mostly played pretty clean. But I don't know what gear he was using at the time. I'll just say that everybody was using every new thing that was available at the time. it wasn't like, well, it had to be a tube amp. It was just new companies were coming out making equipment for rock and roll bands because that market was exploding. It was not a mature market then. It was an exploding market, and everybody was getting their fingers into it. Albert King was using an Ampeg solid state amp, and Chicago had a entire backline of customs with
Terry
two 15-inch JBL cabs, including Terry Kath.
Yeah.
And it was just like whatever. Manufacturers were throwing gear at every single band that was out there, and so there was all kinds of stuff going on. But the sun thing, that always fascinated me because I had built a couple of Dyna power amp kits, and I put I made a little clone of a Fender Twin preamp and put it in front of it, and I thought, oh, I'll make my own guitar amp out of this. And I played through it, and it was horrendous. And then I think, okay, there must be something I don't know because this is terrible. But that was then when I saw. I worked at this music store after that, and a Sun 2000S came in for repair, and I looked at it and went, it had Dynaco stamped on the transformer.
Wow.
And I went, okay, so is this company like part of Dynaco, or did they buy the parts from Dynaco, or did they just buy a bunch of Dynaco kits like I bought a Dynaco kit and just made amps with those in them, and Dynaco didn't know about it? And I never did know that part of the story, and I've always wondered. And the guy's still around, from what I understand. Maybe I should call him and ask him one day, and because that was fascinating. I just thought that was kind of kismet.
Yeah,
And
that's really
all
interesting.
I got to say about that.
All right, well, I got to run, so we got to wrap this up. Any parting thoughts?
I'm finding that listening to music a lot, doesn't matter what it is helping me stay grounded and calm and stable and interested in doing things. And watching the news is not doing that. So I'm just finding I'm finding refuge in music. And
I love that.
and I hope that helps you people out there, because I know everybody's like going, what the fuck, what? And we're doing it here. We're all doing it.
Yeah.
And I have noticed lately that when I sit down and just sort of listen to a track that I might have just listened to a couple of minutes of and then switch to something else, I listen to the whole thing, and then when I'm done, I go, okay, I'm ready to get back to whatever it was I was doing, and I'm like all leveled out. So if anybody finds themselves just feeling a little overwhelmed, just listen to your favorite stuff, or find something new, find some new musical sort of inspiration and check that out. Or an amazing thing that I've been noticing lately is I keep discovering old things that I never heard before that are amazing. On satellite radio, there's deep tracks and underground garage. I just keep hearing things that a version of a favorite song that I never heard before, but that sounds like that is the song that was made famous by so-and-so, but I've never heard this version. I'm just constantly amazed to hear things come out of the woodwork that have been there the whole time and I was never aware of them. So I'm still fascinated and supported, uplifted,
bolstered
by having great music of any kind to listen to. That it doesn't have to be the hottest, newest thing. It can be something that just came out of where the hell did that come from? And it's fascinating and it's great. And even if it's terrible, it's great. It's great because it's terrible, you know.
Good and terrible.
Yeah, yeah. So carry on, hang in there. Thanks for hanging with us. Love y'all.
Nanu, nanu.